The Free Thinker Show. Ignite your mind, challenge the norm.
You ever get that feeling like we're just swimming in words, every single day? It's just
Yeah.
news, social media, even just trying to have a simple conversation. And it's all like jargon, spin. Sometimes it feels like everyone's trying to, I don't know, manipulate you with what they're saying.
It's true. It's like we're drowning in language.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to forget how much, power words actually have.
Yeah.
How much they shape our reality.
And that is exactly why we're taking this deep dive today. We're cracking the code of language with Steuart Chase's The Tyranny of Words. This book, let me tell you, it'll make you think twice about, everything you thought you knew about how we communicate.
Yeah, this goes way beyond just learning new vocabulary. It gets into those deeper thought patterns behind the words. By the time we're done with this deep dive, you'll be able to cut through all the noise, all that information overload, and really spot the difference between solid facts and cleverly disguised fiction.
No pressure, right? Chase, I'll be honest, he doesn't really mess around. He comes right out and says most of our thoughts, not even fully ours, says we're practically programmed by the words we use, even calls it an invisible cage, which, okay, might sound a little dramatic, but I can kind of see his point.
Oh, Chase definitely knows how to grab your attention.
Yeah.
But there's a really, really solid argument under all that boldness. He makes this point that language is a tool, right? Just like a hammer or a computer. And like any tool, it can be used to build amazing things, or it can be used to manipulate, mislead. And that's where Alfred Korzybski comes in with his theory of general semantics. Ever heard that phrase, the map is not the territory?
I have, but honestly, hearing it in this context, it's like it means something totally different now.
Exactly. Korzybski's big idea, and Chase really runs with this, is that words are kind of like maps. They represent reality, sure, but they're not the real thing. Just like a map of a city can't capture, the actual energy of a place, the people, the sounds. Words can never fully explain something as complex as the real world.
Okay, so far so good. But what happens when we forget that difference between the map and the actual territory?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when we start thinking words are the real thing?
That's how we fall into the trap of abstraction. We get lost in these big, important sounding words that have zero connection to what's actually real. Think about it. Justice, freedom, truth. They sound important, right?
Totally. But if you actually stop and are like, wait, what do those even mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like they could mean completely different things to different people.
Exactly. And that is where things get really, really interesting. Chase actually uses Einstein's theory of relativity to explain how even language itself is relative. Just like time and space are relative, the meaning of a word changes depending on, the situation, who's saying it. He uses the example of freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom for whom? It means something totally different to a kid than it does to somebody who's been, wrongfully imprisoned. Wow, you put it like that and it's context is everything. And those big, important sounding words, they can be twisted, manipulated if we're not careful.
That's the big danger of trying to have these fixed definitions in a world that's constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
Chase wants us to be careful about assuming that just because we use the same word, it means the same thing to everyone, no matter their background, their experiences. To really dig into this, he brings up this thing called Ogden's Triangle of Meaning.
Ogden's Triangle of Meaning. Sounds kind of intimidating, honestly, like something you'd see in a geometry textbook. What is this triangle all about?
Okay, so picture a triangle, right? At the very top, you've got the symbol that's like the actual word itself. Then down in the bottom left corner, you have the referent. That's the actual thing in the real world, what the word is supposed to represent. And then over on the right, bottom corner, thought. That's your own personal interpretation of the word.
Okay, got it. I'm picturing it. So how does this triangle, help us understand the whole words have power thing?
Well, the most important thing to remember here is that there's no direct line between, the word itself and the actual thing it's supposed to represent. The connection's not automatic. That connection only exists in our minds, right? We build that bridge ourselves between the symbol and the referent through our own experiences and, our beliefs and how we interpret things.
So that gap between the word and the real thing, that's where things get messy, huh?
Exactly. That's where we get misunderstandings. That's where, honestly, manipulation can sneak in too. Think about it. If somebody can control the actual words you use, or even just nudge how you interpret them, they can kind of control how you see the world. To a certain extent, at least.
That's kind of creepy when you really think about it. So Chase lays out this whole problem, but does he give us any solutions? How do we navigate this minefield of language.
He does, yeah. He's got some really interesting ideas. Like, one thing he talks about is basic English. Basically, it's this super simplified version of English, only uses 850 words.
Wait, 850 words? I think I knew more words than that in, like, elementary school. I mean, I get that it would make you be, like, super precise with your language, but can you really get across all the, I don't know, the nuances of human thought, human experience with such a small vocabulary?
That's the big question, right? Can you make language clearer without, like, losing something essential? Chase really wrestles with that. But even if basic English isn't, a perfect solution, it shows you how important it is to use language that's concise, unambiguous, especially when we're talking about, complex or even controversial topics.
Like that saying, say what you mean and mean what you say. But what about those times when, like, people are using language to deliberately mislead, to manipulate? Are there any red flags we should watch out for?
That's when Chase gets into the really practical stuff. He talks about how language can be used as like a weapon. He brings up people like Joseph Goebbels, the whole Nazi propaganda machine.
Yeah, that's a scary example, the way the Nazi regime used language just to twist meanings, to manipulate people on a massive scale. It really shows you how dangerous words can be in the wrong hands. They're like masters of deception.
Exactly. And Chase uses those kinds of examples to show how these abstract terms that often, honestly, have no real connection to anything concrete, how those can be used as weapons. Words like purity, nation, justice, they're all loaded, right? Emotionally charged. Easy to manipulate with, especially when people are, like, scared or unsure of things.
It's like those words, they just bypass all logic, go straight for the gut, trigger a reaction before you even have time to think. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we develop that, like, internal BS detector so we can see through those tactics?
Jay says we got to constantly be asking ourselves, what's the purpose of this language? What are they trying to accomplish here? Whose interests are being served? He says the real test of language, it's not about how pretty it sounds or even how complex. It's, can it help us survive? Can it help us thrive in the real world?
So it's about being, like, critical consumers of language, right? And not just letting it wash over us. It's like how people talk about media literacy. We need language literacy, too.
100%. Chase even goes so far as to say we should look at, like, mathematics as a model. Now, before you freak out, he's not saying we all need to start talking in equations or anything.
Well, now that you mention it, political debates would probably be a lot shorter.
Yeah, right. But seriously, what he's getting at is that math forces you to be precise, crystal clear. No room for, wishy-washy language in an equation.
It's about understanding that language is powerful, incredibly powerful, but it can also be used against us. Knowing the difference is everything. It's almost like, I don't know, we need some kind of, like, BS detector for language, something that just, like, flashes red anytime someone tries to, use their words to pull one over on us.
Yeah. Honestly, that's not a bad way to think about it. And in a way, that's kind of what Chase is giving us, all those tools we need to really break down language and see those tactics for what they are. Manipulation. He's saying we can break free from this tyranny of words, as he calls it.
So it's not about just, like, ditching language altogether or wishing we could all just talk in emojis and equations, I guess.
No, not at all. It's about using language consciously, with real intention. It's like understanding that words do have power, and any powerful tool, you got to be careful with it. Yeah. And that goes for, both sides, the person using the words and the person, hearing them.
So it's about awareness, being, like, really critical thinkers.
Exactly. The more we understand about language itself, the good, the bad, and how it can be misused, the better we become at really listening, at thinking for ourselves, and ultimately at becoming better communicators too.
So next time you're listening to, like, a politician's speech, or you're scrolling through social media, heck, even just having a conversation with someone, and you hear something that makes you go, hold on a second, what do they really mean by that? That's your cue. Time to put on your detective hat.
100%. Don't just nod along, Ask yourself those questions. What are they really saying here? What's the context? Are they using these, like, loaded words, these emotional words, but not really giving you any concrete examples? Are they skipping over important stuff?
It's like we got to become language detectives, always looking for those clues that tell us the real meaning, the real intention behind the words.
I love that, because that's what it's all about, right? Sharpening those skills, that awareness, so you can analyze not just what someone's saying, but how they're saying it and why. And never forget, knowledge is power. And understanding how language works, that might be some of the most important knowledge you ever get.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Steuart Chase's The Tyranny of Words. I don't know about you, but I am ready to go out there and start decoding the world one word at a time.